Welcome to Channel Unveiling Mysteries. A young man working at a funeral home was captivated by the beauty of a female corpse that had just been brought in. With lust overpowering his reason, he did the unthinkable right there in the morgue. But what he never expected was for the corpse to suddenly come back to life while being violated. The woman, resurrected from the dead, terrified him so much that he fled for his life, not even having time to pull up his pants. As he ran, he screamed in a panic, "A ghost! The corpse is alive! Help!" Can the dead really come back to life? And what is the mystery behind this incident? One afternoon in 2012, a woman was brought to a funeral home. Her name was Yuan. She was just in her 20s, and she was exceptionally beautiful. When she was alive, Yuan was a dance teacher, specializing in teaching children. The day before, due to overwork, she suddenly collapsed on her way home. A kind passerby found her and called for an ambulance. By the time paramedics arrived and took her to the hospital, her heart had already stopped beating. Although doctors tried their best to save her, they could not preserve the young woman's life. The hospital ultimately confirmed her death, issued a death certificate, and notified her family. When Yuan's parents arrived, they were devastated to see their daughter, once a vibrant young woman, now a cold corpse. The doctor explained that the cause of death was sudden cardiac arrest due to overwork. Upon hearing this, Yuan's mother fainted on the spot. Her father, though overwhelmed with grief, remained strong to arrange the funeral so his daughter could rest in peace. Since their family was not from the area and had only moved to the city for Yuan's job, they decided to have her body cremated and take her ashes back to their hometown. Unfamiliar with the area, they didn't know which funeral home to choose. A doctor at the hospital kindly recommended one that frequently worked with them. Yuan's parents agreed and brought their daughter's body there. In life, Yuan had paid great attention to her appearance. Her mother wanted her daughter to look beautiful even in death. She asked the staff to apply makeup for Yuan and dress her in her favorite outfit before the cremation. Because this request was time-consuming, the funeral home scheduled the cremation for the following afternoon. In the meantime, Yuan's body was stored in the morgue. However, during that time, a bizarre event occurred. Usually, the morgue at a funeral home sees very little foot traffic, but it's not immune to intruders who might sneak in to steal valuables. There have even been cases of organs being stolen from corpses to be sold on the black market. To prevent such incidents, the funeral home had increased security, assigning staff to conduct nightly patrols to check the condition of the bodies. That night, the person on duty was Li Qiang. His job included lifting the white sheets covering the bodies to check for any missing parts. Li Qiang was a young man in his 20s. At his age, he should have been pursuing a career or a job with a promising future, but circumstances had led him to work at the funeral home. After graduating from university, lacking special skills or work experience, he was repeatedly rejected for jobs. Seeing his friends find stable employment while he remained jobless, Li Qiang decided to take the civil service exam. However, the path was not easy, and despite his best efforts, he failed. Facing the bitter reality of being unable to find a job or pass the exam, he felt utterly hopeless. While searching for opportunities, a friend recommended a job at the funeral home. Although it was an unusual profession, it came with tenure, a high salary, and good benefits. The only requirement was a strong mind, as funeral homes are considered to have a heavy, somber atmosphere, and very few young people are willing to work there. With a small applicant pool, the chances of being hired were much higher. Left with no other choice, Li Qiang decided to try and was surprisingly accepted. While the job provided him with a stable income and benefits, his love life suffered. His family constantly arranged blind dates for him. But every time he mentioned his job at the funeral home, the women would become hesitant and cut off contact. Furthermore, there were almost no female colleagues his age at the funeral home, leaving Li Qiang single for years. Having become accustomed to being around corpses, Li Qiang no longer felt fear or revulsion. However, when he checked on Yuan Yuan's body, he froze. Beneath the white sheet, the young woman's face was incredibly beautiful. He had never seen a corpse that retained such elegance after death. As a young man who had never been in a relationship, seeing Yuan Yuan ignited his lust. Noticing that no one was around, he lost control and committed a despicable act on Yuan Yuan's body. But just as he had finished his vile act and was pulling up his clothes, a hoarse voice rang out from behind him. "What are you doing?" Li Qiang's entire body went rigid. He turned his head and was horrified to see Yuan Yuan, the woman he had just violated, staring at him with her eyes open. In a state of absolute terror, he thought he was being divinely punished, that his disgusting act had brought the dead back to life. Li Qiang fled for his life, not even having time to pull up his pants. As he ran, he screamed, "A ghost! The corpse is alive! Help!" When the other funeral home staff heard Li Qiang's blood-curdling screams, they initially didn't believe him, thinking he was hallucinating from seeing too many bodies. But when they saw a woman with a pale face, wrapped in a white sheet, chasing right behind Li Qiang, and repeatedly shouting to call the police, they were truly horrified and realized Li Qiang was telling the truth. The corpse had really come back to life. At that moment, Yuan Yuan still didn't realize where she was, but she clearly remembered that someone had just violated her. Without time to explain to the people around her, she rushed to the duty office and called the police herself. Upon receiving the report, the police immediately split into two teams. One team quickly took Yuan Yuan to the hospital for a medical examination, while the other pursued Li Qiang and began investigating the case. At the hospital, after a series of tests, doctors discovered that Yuan Yuan hadn't actually died, but had entered a state of suspended animation, or apparent death. This is a rare phenomenon where the human body exhibits all the signs of death, but is, in fact, still alive. In nature, many animals use apparent death as a defense mechanism to avoid predators. This state can occur in humans during a major shock, causing the body to fall into a deep coma with almost no vital signs. When Yuan Yuan collapsed on the street, the lack of oxygen to her brain caused her heart to beat extremely weakly, and her pulse was nearly undetectable. The examining doctor failed to detect these faint signs and concluded she was dead. Yuan Yuan's revival was thanks to the strong physical stimulation Li Qiang inflicted on her body during the assault, which gradually brought her brain out of its oxygen-deprived state and allowed it to recover. When Yuan Yuan's parents saw their daughter alive, they were so overjoyed they burst into tears, too emotional to speak. But Yuan Yuan herself was still very confused. Her memory stopped at the moment she collapsed. After her health stabilized, the police questioned her. It was only through their account that she learned the whole horrifying truth. When the police asked if her family wanted to press charges against Li Qiang, she thought for a moment and decided not to. With her parents' encouragement, she even wrote a letter expressing her forgiveness for Li Qiang. However, even though Yuan Yuan's family did not press charges, the police still prosecuted Li Qiang for the crime of desecrating a corpse and sent the case to the prosecutor's office. After review, the prosecutor decided to indict Li Qiang and take him to court. At the trial, when asked why he committed the depraved act, Li Qiang claimed it was a moment of impulsive loss of control. He admitted to desecrating the corpse but denied the charge of rape, on the grounds that he was certain she was dead at the time. The judge acknowledged that at the time of the incident, Yuan was not actually dead, meaning she was legally a living person. Therefore, Li Qiang's actions not only constituted desecrating a corpse, but also showed elements of rape under Article 236 of the Criminal Code. However, Li Qiang's defense lawyer argued that the hospital had issued a death certificate, confirming Yuan was dead and her body was in the morgue. This meant that at the time of the crime, Li Qiang had no knowledge that Yuan was alive. Therefore, subjectively, he had no intention of harming a living person, but only intended to desecrate a corpse and should be tried under Article 302 for desecrating a corpse, not rape. Furthermore, the lawyer added that it was because of Li Qiang's actions that Yuan was revived, meaning he had unintentionally saved her. In addition, Yuan and her family had written a letter of forgiveness, so the court should consider a lighter sentence. After considering the arguments, the judge declared a recess. When the trial reconvened, the court delivered its final verdict. Li Qiang had the motive to desecrate a corpse and had performed an act of gratification on the body of a woman he believed to be dead. Therefore, he violated Article 302 of the Criminal Code for desecrating a corpse. However, objectively, this very act helped Yuan to wake up in time, saving her from being cremated. Therefore, the court considered this a mitigating factor. In the end, Li Qiang was sentenced to 2 years in prison for the crime of desecrating a corpse. From the moment it began, the living corpse case shocked the public and attracted widespread attention online. When the court announced its verdict, the debate intensified. Some argued that Li Qiang didn't deserve prison time because he didn't intend to harm a living person and even saved Yuan's life. They argued that without his actions, she would have been cremated and truly died. But the majority of opinions still condemned Li Qiang's actions, asserting that regardless of whether Yuan was alive or dead, desecrating a body is morally unacceptable. He intended to violate a woman's corpse, which shows a profound lack of respect for the deceased. Therefore, he deserved to be punished severely by the law. Analysis of the living corpse. Case: a legal and moral perspective. This case shocked the public not only for its bizarre element of a person declared dead suddenly coming back to life, but also because it raised many questions about law, morality, and the application of justice in unique situations. Let's analyze the various aspects of this case more deeply. 1. The phenomenon of apparent death, medical error, and hospital liability. Yuan entered a state of apparent death, a rare but real medical phenomenon. In this state, heartbeat and breathing can become nearly undetectable by conventional methods, leading doctors to mistakenly conclude that a patient has died. This error raises a significant question about the hospital's liability. In this case, the doctor clearly did not perform a thorough examination before hastily concluding that Yuan was dead, issuing a death certificate, and allowing the family to take her to a funeral home. If the hospital had more accurate diagnostic equipment or stricter protocols, Yuan might have been found alive from the beginning, sparing her this horrific ordeal. Legally, Yuan's family could have sued the hospital for negligence, leading to severe consequences for the patient. 2. Li Qiang's actions. Desecrating a corpse or rape. The most controversial point in this case was determining Li Qiang's crime. From his subjective perspective, he was certain Yuan was dead because the hospital had issued a death certificate. When he committed the act, he had no intention of attacking a living person, but was motivated only to desecrate a corpse. Therefore, based on the defendant's state of mind, his actions would only constitute the crime of desecrating a corpse. From an objective perspective, Yuan was, in fact, still alive. Therefore, the victim of the assault was a living human being. Legally, if a person commits a sexual act against another person who is unconscious or unable to resist, that act constitutes rape. This created a legal conflict. Can someone be convicted of rape when they had no knowledge that the victim was alive? Ultimately, the court chose to try the case under Article 302, desecrating a corpse, but reduced the sentence because his actions inadvertently saved Yuan's life. 3. Morality and public reaction. Although the court did not convict Li Qiang of rape, from a moral standpoint, he was strongly condemned by society. Violating a corpse is an unacceptable act, regardless of the reason. Li Qiang's actions not only showed a lack of respect for the deceased, but also reflected his own deviant nature. The family's forgiveness might have stemmed from their compassion or simply their desire to move past the trauma, but it does not mean his actions are morally excusable. Many netizens debated whether Li Qiang truly deserved prison. Some argued he unintentionally saved a life and deserved forgiveness, but the majority believed the law must be strict to prevent similar acts in the future. Conclusion: was justice truly served? This case brought to light many issues in medicine, law, and ethics, sparking a fierce debate on how to apply the law in extraordinary circumstances. Legally, the 2-year sentence for Li Qiang might be considered reasonable, as from a legal standpoint, he did not have the intent to commit rape. However, this also reveals a legal loophole where a person might escape a rape charge simply because they thought the victim was dead. Morally, regardless of his prison sentence, Li Qiang cannot erase the stain on his character. His actions were a sign of moral decay, an act that offends human dignity. This raises the question of whether a 2-year sentence is truly sufficient to deter and punish him. Regarding the hospital's responsibility, their diagnostic error put Yuan in a tragic situation that could have been avoided. This serves as a warning to the medical industry. Human life cannot be taken lightly. A small mistake can lead to immeasurable consequences. Ultimately, this case underscores a vital truth. Respect for the deceased is a measure of a civilized society's character. Regardless of the reason, desecrating a corpse is unacceptable and must be severely punished. If society does not have sufficiently strong penalties to deter such acts, they will continue to occur, eroding moral values and human dignity. So, what do you think about this case? Was the sentence for Li Qiang fair? Please share your opinion. Don't forget to subscribe to the Unveiling Mysteries channel to always receive the latest videos that help you achieve success in life. Thank you for following and accompanying the channel.